What if one of the most beloved science fiction comedies of the 1990s was never supposed to exist in the form you know it? What if the movie that launched a franchise, made Will Smith a genuine Hollywood superstar, and gave us one of cinema's most iconic partnerships was held together not by careful planning, but by chaos, panic, last-minute decisions, and a string of near disasters that would have sunk a lesser production? Men in Black, released in the summer of 1997, earned nearly $600 million worldwide and permanently changed the landscape of mainstream sci-fi entertainment. But behind that polished, slick exterior, behind those crisp black suits, those gleaming gadgets, and that unforgettable theme song, was a production riddled with feuds, accidents, medical emergencies, and creative decisions so desperate they bordered on insane. Today we are pulling back the curtain and exposing 20 secrets that the studio buried, the cast rarely discusses, and that most fans have never heard. Buckle up, because nothing about Men in Black was as smooth as it looked. Before Will Smith ever put on that black suit, another actor had already been fitted for it. Chris O'Donnell, fresh off his role as Robin in the widely criticized Batman and Robin, was the official first choice for the role of Agent J. He completed costume fittings, attended table reads, and went through preliminary weapons training. Then, roughly 2 weeks before cameras were set to roll, he walked away. His representatives had convinced him that accepting another prominent sidekick role, this time playing second fiddle to Tommy Lee Jones, would permanently typecast him and derail any chance he had at becoming a true leading man. The studio, Columbia Pictures, found itself in genuine crisis. They had pursued O'Donnell exclusively for nearly 8 months and had no backup plan. A frantic round of calls went out to nearly every young male actor working in Hollywood. David Schwimmer declined to protect his commitment to Friends. Matthew Perry passed for the same reason. Brendan Fraser was locked into another project. Will Smith was not even on the original shortlist, primarily because studio executives believed his comedic energy was wrong for the part. It was Smith himself who changed that. His agent pushed Columbia for an audition. Smith flew to New York at his own expense, walked into the room wearing a sharp black suit he had specifically purchased for the occasion, and delivered an improvised audition full of effortless charisma and swagger. Director Barry Sonnenfeld was immediately sold. With filming less than 2 weeks away and no other viable options, Columbia offered Smith the role with a 48-hour deadline. He signed without hesitation, and cinema history was made. Almost everyone who watched Men in Black assumed the prickly, tense dynamic between Agent K and Agent J was pure acting craft. In reality, it was something far more calculated and far more uncomfortable. Tommy Lee Jones made a deliberate decision before filming began that he would refuse to socialize with Will Smith in any meaningful way for the first month of production. No shared lunches, no casual conversation between takes, no warmth of any kind beyond what the script absolutely required. He wanted the relationship between the two men to feel genuinely strained on screen, and he believed the only way to achieve that authentically was to create real emotional distance off-screen as well. Smith later recalled feeling genuinely confused and hurt by the treatment, not understanding why his co-star seemed to actively dislike him. Crew members grew concerned that the two leads had developed a real personality conflict that would damage the film's chemistry. Nobody on the production, including director Sonnenfeld, knew that Jones was executing an entirely intentional strategy. He wanted Smith to feel exactly like a rookie being dismissed and belittled by a veteran, because that was precisely the story being told on screen. The discomfort was real. The desperation was real. And it worked. After approximately 4 weeks, Jones took Smith to dinner and explained everything. Once the method was revealed, the two men formed a genuine friendship. But by then, the cameras had already captured something that could not have been rehearsed. 3 weeks into filming, director Barry Sonnenfeld sat down to watch early footage of the film's primary villain, Edgar the Bug, as originally designed and portrayed. What he saw disappointed him profoundly. The original concept for the Bug was a fairly conventional insectoid creature. Hard exoskeleton, multiple eyes, the kind of monster design that felt interchangeable with dozens of other science fiction films. It was neither frightening enough to generate genuine dread nor outlandish enough to generate genuine laughs. Sonnenfeld stopped production and demanded that industrial light and magic, the legendary visual effects company responsible for the character, go back to the drawing board entirely. The decision was financially catastrophic in the short term. Millions had already been spent developing the original design, building physical animatronic components, and generating early digital models. All of it was abandoned. Actor Vincent D'Onofrio had spent weeks training his body and movement specifically to embody the original creature concept, and that preparation became worthless overnight. The replacement vision was far more unsettling and original, a giant alien insect wearing a human farmer's body like a poorly fitting suit, the flesh hanging wrong, the movements subtly inhuman. The redesign took 9 days under enormous pressure, added millions to the budget, and caused significant production delays. The result, however, became one of the most memorably disturbing villain designs in 1990s mainstream cinema. Among the many moments in Men in Black that audiences quote and remember decades later, one of the most beloved was entirely unscripted. The scene in which Agent J delivers an urgent, comedic, rambling speech confronting an alien dignitary about the potential destruction of Earth was never written in any version of Ed Solomon's screenplay. The original script contained a single flat line, a functional placeholder that Sonnenfeld himself felt was too dull to work. He told Smith to make the moment feel more urgent and more alive. Smith took that loose direction and improvised an entire 3-minute sequence from nothing, inventing phrases and observations on the spot that had never appeared anywhere in the production. Tommy Lee Jones, who had carefully memorized scripted responses, suddenly found himself reacting to completely different dialogue, and the film captured him genuinely processing and responding in real time. Columbia executives initially demanded the scripted version be used because they had paid professional writers to create specific dialogue. Sonnenfeld refused and screened both versions for studio leadership. The improvised version won unanimously. Reshooting the surrounding scenes to integrate Smith's freestyle performance added substantial cost to the production budget, but the scene became one of the film's defining sequences precisely because it was never planned. The neuralizer, that elegant silver memory erasing device that became one of the most iconic props in 1990s cinema, was far more valuable than most people realize. Columbia Pictures commissioned 15 fully functional neuralizer props, each containing genuine LED lighting technology, precision engineering, and motorized internal components. The price tag for each individual unit was staggering. During the course of filming, 7 of those props disappeared across 3 separate incidents. 3 vanished from a locked prop truck during location filming in New York City. 2 more went missing from the studio prop department in Los Angeles under circumstances that investigators described as consistent with an inside job, though no charges were ever filed. A final pair disappeared during the last week of production. All 7 stolen neuralizers eventually surfaced on the collector's market, some selling for prices far exceeding their original production cost. Columbia pursued legal action to recover the props and spent considerable resources on investigations, replacement units, and attorney fees. The neuralizer theft cases were never fully resolved. To this day, they stand as one of Hollywood's most notorious unsolved prop crimes. Rip Torn, who played MIB director Zed with authoritative comic timing, was arrested for drunk driving during the 4th week of filming after crashing his vehicle into a production car on his way to set. He spent several hours in custody before Columbia's legal team arranged his release and began negotiating to reduce the charges. The situation created an immediate logistical nightmare because Torn was legally required to appear at court hearings and attend court-mandated alcohol education sessions during the ongoing production schedule. The solution Sonnenfeld devised was to restructure Zed's scenes so they could be filmed in concentrated blocks, allowing Torn to complete all his required footage during the gaps between legal obligations. Scenes that under normal circumstances would have been spread across weeks of production were compressed into intensive multi-day sessions. Meanwhile, Columbia's publicity team quietly approached entertainment media outlets and offered exclusive interview access to the film's 2 stars in exchange for suppressing the arrest story. The strategy largely worked. Most entertainment press never reported the incident during the film's release period. Torn himself eventually addressed it publicly years later, long after the film had become a cultural landmark. The massive, sleek, retro-futuristic MIB headquarters was constructed inside a decommissioned aircraft hangar at a former Marine Corps air station in California. It was an impressive logistical choice, The enormous space perfectly accommodated the scale of the sets. 3 weeks into filming, however, structural engineers brought in for a routine assessment made a disturbing discovery. The hangar, which had been built decades earlier during the Second World War, had extensive wood rot in its primary support beams, damage that previous inspections had entirely missed. Engineers calculated a meaningful probability of catastrophic roof failure within months. The production faced an impossible decision. Moving the entire set would cost millions and require weeks. Reinforcing the existing structure was cheaper and faster, but still enormously disruptive. Columbia chose reinforcement. Over 200 construction workers installed steel support columns throughout the hangar while filming continued around them, with some of those emergency supports briefly visible in background shots and later digitally removed during post-production. What nobody publicized at the time was that during the final week of filming in that location, a section of the roof did partially collapse. At 3 o'clock in the morning, roughly 11 hours after the crew had wrapped for the night. The timing was the difference between a production inconvenience and a genuine catastrophe. To portray Edgar the Bug with appropriate physical grotesqueness, Vincent D'Onofrio undertook one of the most extreme body transformation decisions in the film's production history. He deliberately gained 50 pounds by consuming an extraordinary caloric surplus over a period of 8 weeks before cameras rolled. His reasoning was consistent with his method approach. He wanted the human body Edgar inhabited to look visibly swollen and uncomfortable, as though something too large was pressing outward from beneath the skin. The physical toll, however, proved far more serious than anticipated. During the 3rd week of filming, D'Onofrio experienced severe chest pain and breathing difficulty while performing an action sequence. Emergency medical personnel on set immediately called for an ambulance, fearing cardiac arrest. He was hospitalized and evaluated thoroughly. While tests confirmed he had not experienced a heart attack, physicians determined that the rapid and extreme weight gain had pushed his blood pressure to dangerously elevated levels and placed severe stress on his cardiovascular system. Doctors recommended he withdraw from the film immediately. D'Onofrio refused. A compromise was reached whereby the production hired a full-time cardiac nurse to monitor his vital signs between every take, placed him on blood pressure medication, and implemented a carefully managed dietary plan designed to gradually reduce his weight while maintaining enough visual continuity for the remaining scenes. He later described the physical transformation as the most genuine.